I love LEGO games, but even the things that you love have room for improvement. In today's video, I decided to compile some changes I'd like to see implemented into future titles. Be sure to round off in the comments what changes you'd like to see. I think one of the first issues that comes to mind is the moments between playing levels and exploring hubs, navigating menus. There have been some improvements in the latest games, like having a level select, separating levels by chunks, and displaying the completion requirements for each section. However, I still think there's room for improvement. Having the ability to jump into a level or hub within the title screen would speed things up immensely. It can take a while to wait for the game to load me into the hub, then boot up the level from there, and I'd like to start playing quickly. Likewise, I think the character selection screen could use a facelift. With these modern rosters reaching numbers within the hundreds, it makes it hard to pick a specific character. Grouping characters into folders by series or more alignment could allow the selection screen to zoom in and become more visible. This could also provide the chance to group together character variants. Somewhat related, but I think it would be pretty cool if there was a red brick that could automatically choose a random character suited for a puzzle, removing the need to go to the selection screen entirely. Wasn't sure when to add this, but I thought it would be pretty cool to mention. The character customizer in DC Supervillains was already a massive improvement. I figured I'd offer a few small suggestions. For one thing, I'd appreciate it if adding a weapon didn't replace the personality-specific idle animation. Allowing our characters' personalities to shine through while holding a specific weapon would allow more personalization. Also, having more generic hats, hairpieces, bodies, and such would give more options to character creation. Running, jumping, and attacking are super fun in LEGO games, but I think we can increase the fun with a few improvements. Overall, it would be pretty cool if characters were more mobile in general. One of the reasons why the Ninjago movie game is one of my favorites is because of how mobile you are and how far you can get around with nothing but a double jump. Combining a more potent dodge roll from DC Supervillains with a jump could lead to the creation of a long jump. The major hurdle with making characters more mobile is that it could create issues with pacing, like sequence breaking. This wouldn't be too much of an issue with an action platformer, but LEGO games tend to lean on the side of puzzle games, so sequence breaking could be problematic. The designers would have to strike a balance with how much freedom of movement would empower the players while keeping the pace of levels intact. On the topic of combat, adding a combat triangle could increase depth and fun. For those uninitiated, the combat triangle is that dynamic where attacks beat grabs, grabs beat blocks, and blocks beat attacks. Having dynamic enemies who block attacks or attempt to grab you would be super cool. With a grab button, you could have players and enemies be able to pick up and throw objects like projectiles. Throw in a special move for some of the cast and you've got yourself a full moveset. Now, on the topic of throwing. Pretty self-explanatory, being able to freely pick up, move, and throw objects can lead to depth and puzzle solving. You could have situations where you're paired with a character who can't lift up objects but has an ability that you don't. With this scenario, you'd have an interesting back and forth between the two characters. This is just one example of this concept. I'm sure the designers at TT Games can think of way cooler ideas. I'm not too fond of the way vehicles control in LEGO games, so much so that they end up being my least favorite parts of these games. I feel like they're a little too loose. Oftentimes the cars on the road will move slower than you do, making vehicle navigation frustrating. It's possible this is a personal problem or an issue with the hub design. Over the years, hub worlds in LEGO games grew larger and more dense. Running through Chronopolis in Marvel's Superheroes 2 can feel somewhat claustrophobic with how dense the map can be. If the next set of games are going to include multiple hubs, I'd appreciate it if they could be varied in size, density, and verticality. The sloping hills of Sonic's hub in LEGO Dimensions and the flat openness of the farm in Avengers help create diversity in their respective games. I understand that having multiple separate hubs might not be an effective use of resources, so if the next games go back to one huge map, variation between the different sections would be appreciated. Playing these games with a friend is incredible fun, but I'd love to play these games with 2 more players. Having 4-player co-op in the main campaign would be a dream, but I understand that considering the game balance, story, and even the IP being used, this might be difficult. Another welcomed alternative would be the return of battle arenas. I felt like the concept was really hitting its stride in Marvel's Superheroes 2, with its smaller maps, larger cast of characters, and creative modes. Adding a bit of customization in the match settings would make this multiplayer mode absolutely perfect. One of my favorite new additions to the LEGO game formula was the addition of a notoriety system. In DC supervillains, if you attacked civilians, cars, or the environment, the police would come to attack you. In order to get them to leave, you'd either have to run away from the police or die trying. What made it great was that you were never too far away from a combat encounter. I hope some form of this system returns in a future game with a few expansions on the formula. It would be cool if the enemy changed if you played as either a good guy or a bad guy. For example, villains would have the police chase after them as usual, but maybe heroes could have some local gangs attack them as well. It would also be super cool if the longer you fought, tougher enemies would increase. Maybe it would lead to a mini-boss. Car chases would be awesome as well. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but you can see how this concept sparks the imagination. Recent LEGO games gave you the ability to take selfies. I think this feature can be expanded into a full photo mode. Having different filters and stickers alongside being able to pause the game to get the perfect shot would be tons of fun. I've been having a blast using photo modes in games like Super Mario Odyssey, and I bet I'd have more fun if a mode like this was in LEGO games. I think going forward, a re-evaluation of large rosters is a necessity. While it can be thrilling to play a game with over 200 or 300 characters, the excitement tends to wane when you come to the realization that 80% of the roster comprises of clones and recolors. While this practice allows a wider range of characters to be included, the campaign of a standard LEGO game won't even utilize them. Admittedly, it is fun to collect them all, however I'm willing to sacrifice a bit of that fun for the satisfaction of using a more condensed, diverse, and exciting roster of characters. Having less characters who are more in-depth with their abilities and creative in their appearance, I believe would lead to a more enjoyable game.